Yes.
You good?
Okay. All right.
All right, good.
Everybody. Ah. Oh, it's not. Last thing I want to do is hear my own voice coming from my iPad when I stream this. Okay. Katie, hold on. I might have you heard. Could you say something?
Hello.
Okay, good. I can have. Okay, just having a little trouble with my audio. Okay, let's see if I can do this countdown thing now. Hold on. Technology.
What is it? The YouTube's on now, yeah? So. Good.
All right. All right. All right. Well, I hope I'm coming in loud and clear. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining us on the 15th Nite Kansai, our third one online now. My name is Raymond Terhune, one of the organizers for Nite Kansai, and I'd like to introduce my other organizer, Katie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Katie. Yes, I'm Raymond's co-organizer, but Raymond really did all the work for this one. So, yeah.
I suppose there is an advantage of just sitting at your desk, just sending out emails, begging people to be part of.
So that means when there's a problem, we know who to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, what are you gonna do though? I've saved, quarantined inside.
The Minecraft's looking sky there.
Oh no, this is from Kingdom Hearts 3 actually.
Ooh,
I stand
really?
corrected.
Yeah, Mr. Star Trek Next Generation picture behind you.
That's signed by the entire bridge crew.
I know it's
beautiful.
It's very cool.
It's gorgeous. I'm so jealous. I gotta see that sometime when it's safe to go to Tokyo.
My credentials in this nerd thing will show very, very soon.
Oh yes, yes. Oh, it's exciting. It's exciting. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to kind of kick this off. Today we've got two fantastic speakers in two very different topics and subject matters, but in a sense quite appropriate for this day and age on both ends. So, Alex, are you ready? Can I kick off the introduction? Okay. Well, our first speaker up is Dr. Alexander Weiss, who is currently a visiting professor at Kyoto University. And when he's not at Kyodai, he is a senior lecturer in psychology at the University of Edinburgh. With his presentation title, Can Being Neurotic Be a Good Thing? So when you're ready, Alex, please go ahead and take it away.
Okay, I guess I have to share my screen somehow. Yuck. Where's the share screen business? Hold on. I've zoomed, there we go. And what is going on? Hold on once. My screen is. This is what happens when you don't have a keyboard. It becomes difficult. I think I'm just going to have to. I'm having trouble sharing my screen. It's not giving me the option to share my screen. I'm just not able to get into Zoom somehow. Aye. Start Zoom. My Zoom has started though. Right. That one. Come on. Oh, shucks. Okay, I am kind of messed up right now.
You're still muted there, Raymond.
Yeah, and we've lost Alex. We lost the speaker. No. So this is what happens when we run things online.
Okay.
If
he had
the case,
just working before the call, I'm sure.
Yeah, he did.
Start.
Mm-hmm.
I can kick things off.
In the meantime, yeah, John, could you kick things off then instead?
Thank you, John.
Yeah, sure. No pressure.
Okay.
All right.
Well, our first stop speaker. Let me reintroduce you then.
Sure.
Is calling you from Tokyo. Is John Baumlin, and he will be talking about taking back your data with the presentation title, "Give Me Back My Data." So, John, go ahead and take it away.
Give me back my data. You damn corporations. So yeah, I am living in Tokyo, but my heart exists in Kansai. I originally I was living in Nagoya for quite a while, and well, that's still like not really Kansai, but I lived in Osaka after that, and I really love the area. So thanks everyone for coming today, and thanks for really just taking an interest in.
I've got something that says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, thanks Alex for getting back. While we're working on your tech side, we'll get John to start speaking first, and then we'll work on yours next. Is that okay?
Sure.
Cool. Glad you guys get that worked out. And I'm glad that everyone who kind of like came here today is really interested in working with encryption. So the last talk that I gave for Nerd Night Tokyo 2 months ago, or about 2 months ago, was about Hong Kong and encrypted messaging. So how you can talk to people using encryption. And it's not always like the most convenient thing in the world. I'm not going to lie, but if you can really make use of these technologies more in your daily life, you can really lower the profile that corporations and governments and all these not necessarily bad, but actors who are trying to use you as their product away, and you can actually really just take control of your life and of where your data is and how certain entities treat you. And a big part of that is using free and open source software, using encryption, and self-hosting. So by doing that, we really get the opportunity to just, you know, if you're going to go out and hang out with your friends, like it's just you and your friends hanging out, and you want to recreate that experience online, a good way to do that is with encryption. So the data is only going to the person that it's intended to go to, and you can do that by using a lot of different softwares. And today I'm going to set up from scratch. We're going to do something a little different, a live demonstration of setting up a completely new server from scratch using the software Jitsi Meet. And Jitsi is really cool because it only requires a web browser, doesn't require anyone to install anything, doesn't require anyone to know anything about the software. When people start using Jitsi, they just drop a link and then you're connected in your browser, you hit OK, and then you're talking. And it sets up an end-to-end relay with the other person, so that data is automatically encrypted when it's going back and forth. So the goal for today is for everyone to just kind of demystify everything, demystify the process of setting up a server. So you can just jump in. You can come back into this video, and just tomorrow's Mountain Day in Japan. So if you have a day off, if you have really 20-ish minutes, as I'm going to attempt to do really fast, you can set up a server. So let's go ahead and do that right now. And I'm going to keep it really simple. We're going to be setting up a DigitalOcean server, which is a pretty cheap server process. And I'm just going to share right here. We have the, we should see just the backend for DigitalOcean. So all I did from here was I put in my credit card information, I set up an account, and I created a Ubuntu 18.04, which is a Linux operating system, Ubuntu LTS long-term support droplet. So I just started a server, and I'm just going to hit Launch Console right here. I'm going to switch that over to share the console screen so you can all see that. And as you can see here, we just launched into a brand new console where I just started this server. So this is brand new from scratch. Let's do it. So I'm just going to follow the guide, and I'll give Raymond and everyone else the links so they can follow the guide afterwards. And you can actually refer to that if you need to throughout the process. Using tutorials is not like a sign of weakness or anything. It is learning. Tutorials are learning. So always use these good references by people who usually develop the software or are very, very familiar with using it. So the first thing we do when we set up a new server is we need to make a new user. Right now we're the root user. And if your root user is doing everything and someone gains access to that, you're in a lot of trouble because then they have access to your whole server. So we're going to add a user. And the command for that is just add user. And we're going to make a username called Jitsi. And that's going to need a new password, and Unix being very, very secure and all of that won't show the password on the screen, but I am entering one. And we'll hit enter, and then I will confirm that. And then it'll ask me a whole bunch of information, like what's your full name? What's your room number? What's your work? Like what's your phone or whatever. It doesn't matter. You don't actually need to even enter any of that. Just hit enter, 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 yes. So you make a new user. So now I have a new user, but that user can't do anything. The user doesn't know anything. It doesn't have any permissions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type user mod -ag sudo jitsi. Now the user mod is user modification. That's the command for changing user permissions. And there's these two flags AG. And if we ever don't know what those mean, we can just type man for manual on the user mod command, and we can figure out what the heck these flags mean. We see them in guides all the time, but they're really right there. So it's append for A, and then G, capital G for group. So I'm appending a group. So I'm appending a group to this user. So hit Q to exit that. It says that right on the screen for you. -ag, remaining a sudo super user do. I don't remember what the do stands for, but you'll get used to it. So super user do jitsi. So now this is going to be a super user and be able to execute the commands we need it to execute. But before we switch over to that new user and actually install Jitsi, one thing we're going to do first is throw a firewall on our server, just a really, really basic security measure so people can't just access it willy-nilly, any application we're hosting. We only want people to access the applications that they actually are like intending to access. So what we're going to do here is we're going to type UFW app list, and it says the available applications, open SSH. Now, what this console is an SSH console. It's a secure shell console that you can use to connect to talk to your server. The reason why like it's laggy here, this is not because of Zoom or anything else or the stream. It's because it's just like directly connected to it, and it can't. It just needs to have like a very direct connection. So we're going to allow that connection through OpenSSH. And normally you would set up keys or something, but we're just going to use a password for now, just to keep things simple. First project, enable that, and then we're just going to type UFW status to see that it's going, it's open and working. And again, this is not like all, you don't have to be, you're probably like, oh my God, what is UFW, user mod, AG, sudo, I don't know. This is all written in initial server setup guide on DigitalOcean. They have tons of great guides. I'm not being paid by them. I'm just saying that this is a great resource for you to get started. And they're all very clear. Okay, so we're pretty much done with that part. We have the firewall set up. So the next thing we need to do, though, is that between Jitsi on our server and our users, there's this big thing called the internet. So we're gonna have to set the server up with a host name. So when it gets accessed, the server kind of understands it's to configure it with the domain name service and recognize the networking. So the first thing we're going to do there is we're going to switch over to our new account, because we always install things on new accounts, separate accounts. So if that application is compromised, you don't compromise the whole system. And we're going to type sudo hostname CTL, which is kind of the suite for controlling host names, tool suite. And we're going to type set host name. And then you're going to type your domain. So when you set up a domain, you need to go to a domain provider like GoDaddy, Namecheap, one of these, and set up a domain directly to, so just that's going to be what people type in the address bar. So I have a domain set up already. It's jitsi.nerdnite.xyz. And we're going to hope this works. I just registered it earlier today. It can take like a few hours sometimes for all the UN domain name servers to recognize like all of the internet connections to the different domains. So that does take a little while to propagate through all the servers. And if it doesn't work right away, that's all right. I have another demonstration, but this is the process that you're going to use regardless. And then it's going to ask for my password because I used one of those commands. I put in that password. And there you go. And it should have ran. And we can confirm that just by typing hostname. And there it is, jitsi.nerdnite.xyz. Perfect. Okay, so we're almost at the point where we want to actually install it. But we need to do one more thing for networking, which is tell our computer that this is actually our local host, that this isn't just something on the internet, but the loopback address to the local host is actually this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down here, and localhost is already there, but we're going to type 127.0.0.1, and we're going to type jitsi.nerdnite.xyz. And this is just, again, telling your computer that to accept these local connections, that they're accepted on your internal network. And there you go. So we're gonna expand that firewall connection a little bit. As we did before, we set up the firewall, but we're going to open some more ports on the firewall for internet access, which is usually port 80 for normal HTTP, and port 443, and just going to use a couple other ones. Like, I guess, like, you remember those old games you used to play when you would have to like forward the port on your router or something, like when you played the pretty old video games back in the day. That's what we're doing right now. We're playing StarCraft. We're forwarding the ports for Jitsi's application, kind of, and we're really just making sure that this works. Except we're going to actually be using encryption and supporting Hong Kong, unlike Blizzard. So little jab there, but those are all the ports. So sudo UFW allow for each port and protocol. And those are just specific to Jitsi and a web server. So those are going to be different for every project you install. Some need them, some don't. But once those are all open, you can see it. They all say allow. We're good to go. So now let's actually install Jitsi. So the first thing we're going to do when we install a new software is make sure that the software we are downloading is actually the software that the developers are serving. So what happens if we have like 80 different host servers or whatever, people downloading this application over and over, and one of them puts like malicious code in it? We don't want that to happen, and the developers don't want that to happen. So what they do is they have keys that we can download to actually check that. You're going to wget the key, and that's just the address for the Jitsi key. And then we're going to type sudo apt key add .jitsi-key.gpg.key. And as we're going by, I just noticed that Jitsi key said permission denied. So why did that happen? That happened because I did not act as a super user. I didn't type sudo. So if that ever happens to you, what you can do is you can type sudo !!!!!!! just uses the previous line and puts it there. So I don't have to like type that out again. And now it's going to go and it's going to download. And always look at your system messages. They're actually very, very helpful, unlike on Windows. So that's in. So now that I have the key, I'm going to add the key to my repository, and it says it's OK. So that means that the package manager has the key, and we're sure that that's correct. So we can get rid of it because we don't need it anymore. We're feeling good about this. And again, that permission denied came up. So we're going to hit sudo ! ! That's gone. And then we're going to just add that Jitsi source into our package manager. Our package manager is basically a tool that's going to download the program for us. And unsurprisingly, that download link is deb for Debian, which is Ubuntu based, download.jitsi.org, stable. That's just the stable version of Jitsi. So we're just telling our computer, hey, you're going to be downloading this when we update, because when we update, we're going to update everything at once. We're going to update our security updates. We're going to update this. We're going to update Jitsi, all of our programs. We don't ever want to have to update our programs individually. We're just going to type apt update and it's going to go and it's going to pull everything from this source. So let's do that. Sudo apt update, and we're going to update the list. And you can see that it's not just getting Jitsi stable, it's getting a whole bunch of security updates as well, because this is a brand new server. And then we're going to type sudo. And now that Jitsi is in there, I'm actually going to type upgrade as well. Make sure that that's all good. It's going to download 198 megabytes of updates. And you can see that only takes a few seconds when you're doing it on giant server bases, and it installs it quite easily. And every time these things install, I usually like to get a beer. I got the nice like Nerd Night glass. I'm really happy about this. It's like exactly 12 fluid ounces. So it perfectly fits a beer. Like I like that it's like a beaker because it's kind of like you can test different beers. It's easy to pour for friends, things like that. But as this installs, the computer's doing a whole lot for you right now. And we're going to see that more in a script that we run in a few minutes. And after this is done, we're going to really just be at the point where we just install Jitsi Meet, and then we're going to configure it, and that's it. So that's really the whole process of setting up a server quite easily. And it's 81%, 83, 87. It's like very exciting green progress bar here. And it's great when when everything's all set up, because when you just run it, it just updates automatically. Like so much of this is automated compared to 5 or 10 years ago. Documentation is really pivotal. So now that that's just about done, so 98%, 90%, 98, show me 99. That'd be great. The last thing it's doing is just processing all the triggers so we can input for each database and everything. Let's go. Live demonstrations are always fun when something less than expected happens. Let's just take a few seconds. There we go. Generating. Updating certificates, 99, and we're about done. Yeah. There we go. All right, so it's going to open a, it opened a package manager for me. So I'm just going to say, or package configuration for me. So I'm just going to say, just keep the local version. I don't I don't really mind. Let's just keep all the basic local stuff done in there. And it says done. Okay, great. So let's sudo apt install Jitsi.
Just want to remind you, John, that
Yep.
there's 20 minutes.
Okay. Okay. Yep. So we're gonna install it right now. We're gonna hit the install button. Is that okay?
Keep going.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry about that. And yep, that's going to install. And that's pretty much going to be it. There's going to be some specific configuration options here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to put in Jitsi dot nerdnite dot xyz. We're going to hit OK. And then we're going to generate the certificate. It's going to be self-signed, so it's not us just yet. And it's not going to be too difficult to set that up with your DNS. So this is pretty much just the full process of actually installing it. And I'm going to skip for now just to get to the end, thanks to my warning from Raymond here. Normally, we'd want to configure this to just so the authentication is only for specific users. But there's all details about that in the DigitalOcean tutorial. But it's really not that hard. But one thing I do want to cover really quick in just a couple minutes here, as so we wrap up, is that we need to use something called certbot. And certbot is the certification bot that basically validates HTTPS certificates. And the HTTPS certificates are really important because they are basically what validates encryption in between your computer and an internet source. So we're going to do that. And Jitsi Meet, we don't have to really do anything for it. Jitsi Meet has a script already prepared for that. We're just going to type sudo apt that, install that, and we'll pretty much be done. And since we can't do any of the user configuration and stuff today, I'm just going to run the shell script right here. I'll probably do a little demonstration just on an existing one I already have for my own political work, which is on jitsi.tokyo.democrat. And I think what was planning to go last, because we changed the order. I think I'm gonna set that up and then give that to Raymond after Alex is done speaking, and then we'll drop something in there for everyone to use. So just a little bit of fun for everyone watching today. All right, I think we'll come back to that in a little bit, but really that's it. It's completely installed at this point, and we just need to configure it a little bit, but I'll use a pre-configured one to show you the final result. So I hope everyone has a little more confidence about setting this stuff up. All right. Since I'm at time, Raymond, I'm gonna let you take over, and we can do a test. We can do a test afterward. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, John. That was man. Certainly the first time I think we've had somebody who just used the command console to present everything.
Yeah, I would love to run a test actually on this server. So maybe we can do that afterwards.
Yeah, yeah. Chunk in everything into the chat, and we'll throw it onto the YouTube as well. Maybe if we have time after Alex's talk, and like we kind of do a end thing.
I'm an Emacs user, so it makes me feel all warm and fuzzy to see that.
Yeah. So we will. Yeah. We got time for questions. So if anybody in the Zoom they want to write into the chat any questions, or they want to unmute themselves, there's a command that you can do hand up, and so we can call on you. And anybody on the YouTube, they can also toss into the YouTube chat and Katie will keep an eye on that for us. But Alex, did you want to have an additional comment on that? Sorry, I interrupted you.
No. Well, it's nice to see, Linux being, I've got a Windows machine that I'm using for this, but my kind of preferred sort of thing at work and home is I've been running a Linux system now for, I think, earlier than 2002. So I had a Gen 2 system that was going for 15 years until the hardware broke. So
it's fantastic.
Pathetic, yeah, I know.
No, fantastic. 15 years of uptime is really good.
Yeah.
I want to note,
hardware was what died, so.
15 years is a good amount of time. Yeah, so I guess like the really fun part about this stuff is that you can run it on anything. If you have an old laptop that you're not using, you have a Raspberry Pi. You don't need to get a DigitalOcean server. You can run it off anything you want as long as you have everything configured with your router properly. I did actually forget to throw in my email for that cert bot, but I just ran it again and then I put my email in. So if yeah, but it's just always watch your console. The things it tells you are just like much more helpful than you would expect. I think a lot of us are pretty used to like growing up in this era using Windows 98, 2000, ME, Vista, like all that stuff, and an error happens and it's just like a box or it's just like a RAM address and you're like, it tells you nothing. But when you're using, the nice thing about this stuff is when you're using server consoles, like it actually tells you like what the error is. And it's quite easy to figure things out and search online, because if you're getting an error, someone else probably has already gotten that error and asked the question already. So it really is fun and easy to do. And I really encourage everyone to give it a shot.
Do we have any questions from the Zoom participants or the YouTube comments? You just go ahead. While we're waiting for any kind of comment to come in, I had a question on that. I think this is the first time I've ever seen an actual server being set up like this, and you've gone through the motions really well, and we see it, but it still seems. I think there's a little bit more homework that I think like just even a normie like me would have to like go through. Would what you showed us, is that a good entry point to like start up, or is there like some kind of more user-friendly tool or activity that you can do that can actually kind of maybe even get you interested in setting up servers or kind of taking more control of your own data?
Yeah, one of the easiest things you can do is I mean, the first thing I did was ever did was set up a Mumble server, and that was pretty nice. That it doesn't have like the encryption feature that Jitsi does or the ease of use, because people need a client and then use that client. So I think the best thing you can start out with is just something that any end user can use, and then put the brunt of the homework on yourself. So when you do get it working, people can actually use it, and it feels a lot better. Like that reward is a lot higher. There are some basic things that you might want to use, like cd is change directory, ls to list out all the files in a folder, pwd is present working directory. There's some basic like Unix stuff, but you will pick it up as you do tutorials. Like I said at the start, tutorials are learning, and the stuff that I presented today, it was a little fast. We came up against time, but it will run as soon as it's configured and everything. It will run just fine once it's started up. There's just a couple extra commands we have to run to start it up, but they're all pretty well listed, and documentation these days is great. It is so much better than the Gen 2 15 years ago era, where you really had to like prod and fix and figure things out. Like the documentation today is literally like start from zero, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And the way you learn more is like, well, what does that do? Like, user mod minus ag sudo. Like, what does ag mean? And if you keep asking yourself like those questions and you keep figuring those out, then you'll pick it up very, very, very quickly. If you just want to like zoom to the one thing that you want to do, like the one application you want, you can just use the tutorial. But if you want to actually learn more, and as you run into problems and you Google those problems, then that's when you really start to become faster and more experienced at it. But I think Jitsi is a good, like, it won't take you 20 minutes. It'll probably take you 2 hours and a little bit of learning about DNS. But it can be a good first project and pretty useful in today's era.
And yeah, Jitsi being a video chatting software as it is, if you don't want to use Zoom anymore, then
yep,
setting
exactly.
something up like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. We have time for maybe one or two more comments or questions.
Matt's asked a question in the group chat.
Oh.
It says, what kind of load could a Raspberry Pi server run?
What kind of load? What kind of what?
Load
is what it says.
Oh, load. That depends on the Raspberry Pi.
Hold on. You might want to explain like load and what Raspberry Pi is, just in case people don't. Just so people understand what those two things are.
Yeah. So load is kind of a general catch-all term, I think, for just the amount of performance that a device can give. So, obviously the limiting factor in self-hosting is your home internet connection. So if your home internet is like 10 Mbps, you're probably not going to be doing too good. But if you got gigabit internet, that's fantastic. And also power is like a good limiter. If you have like 4 or 5 computers hooked up, you are going to blow out your circuit breaker probably, as I have many times. So it really depends on what your home utilities allow you to do. But you can run a Mumble server off a Pi. You can run a
just quickly, what's a Raspberry Pi as well?
Raspberry Pi is a completely self-dedicated computer that's on a chip that's this big. I have one. I'll go get one after Alex's talk maybe and show you. I have one sitting right over there, and it's basically a completely self-contained computer that you can just plug into your Ethernet and just plug in like an SD card, and you can run a whole computer off it and connect to it through your local network. So if you want to run a server that's on all the time, so because you turn your computer off at night, probably, unless you're me, but most people turn their computer off at night. You're running a server that people want to access, like a website or Minecraft or Mumble or Private Bin or a Nextcloud or any of these open source alternatives to applications that we use every day. You want it always on and always available. So Raspberry Pi is a great tool. Fun. It's really fun do-it-yourself weekend stuff, honestly.
All right. With that, I don't see any kind of comments coming from the live chat on YouTube.
Can I ask a question? Oh. We got time. So like very, very normal low-level stuff. What would be the main purpose of wanting to set up your own server for video chat? Like, so end-to-end encryption, but like, when is that necessary? I suppose
when you have friends in Hong Kong.
Okay.
But I think it's good all the time, because if you look at like Discord's like terms of service, for example, it basically says that like they own everything you talk about, and they've definitely like moved to a situation where they're really analyzing like through an algorithm everything you say and like recording it. Like it's in their terms of service, like, and they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna start moving to like recording what people type and doing analytics on that, and they'll call it like anonymous statistics and analytics, but they're like taking all of your data for their business use. So I would try to use it as much as possible, and the use case improves the easier it is. So if you have something, I love browser stuff. If it opens in a browser, I really like the application, and that's really possible with self-hosted stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I think for me, at least I thought like for text chats, like if I'm using Facebook.
Oh,
chat
IRC
like
server is easy.
Yeah. But yeah, I always had the idea that if you're talking, if it's a video call or something, then they don't really listen in so much.
Yeah. When a Raspberry Pi might not be the best depending on your home connection for a video chat. I would definitely use a server for that. This is a $10. There's actually on the DigitalOcean page. I'll post this for you guys can share this with the YouTube chat because I was just referencing it throughout, and the initial server setup as well.
Oh, you're sending it directly to me, and it's not onto the everyone.
Yeah. I can, if you can post it in the. Oh, yep. Yeah. Thanks. They have like a nice table that's like, hey, how much load can you get for like this kind of server, and like based on how much bandwidth you have, and then you can adjust. Like for a $10 server, you can probably keep like under, like I'd say like 10 people pretty easily on this application for video conferencing. And if you want to go like up, like there's like a point where and all these different applications, they have different service purposes, uses, features, depends on what you want. Working on the back end is fun because you don't have to like worry about how things look. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm gonna put these into the Zoom chat, and Katie, if you can put that onto the YouTube as well, that'd be great. We'll make this available when we make these talks public. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to finish up with John's talk. And any kind of lingering questions, we'll keep an eye on everything. So if you got any more stuff or any comments on all of this, please keep them coming. But for the time being, we will take a 5 to 10 minute break. Depends on how long it takes me to fill up my glass again, my Nerd Night glass. And we'll see you soon. Thank you, John.
Thanks, guys. And I hope you're feeling a little more confident that it's like not that hard to just type things in and get going.
You said what, 2 hours?
I think the first time I did it, it took me about an hour and 20 minutes, and I had 3 or 4 projects under my belt at that point. So yeah, probably about 2 hours. I hope.
All right. And yeah, next up after the break, we'll be coming on with Alex's talk. All right, let me just see if I can go into our... And we are back. Oh, there I am. Okay. So let's see. Alex, you're with us?
I'm here. Yep.
Excellent. All right. Well, had a little bit of a little hiccup there in the beginning, but now I hope we can get on with Alex's talk, which honestly, there's might be some personal stake to a lot of people who are a little bit, worried about current pandemic and current climate and everything. So let me reintroduce you here. Dr. Alex Weiss, currently he is a visiting professor at Kyoto University, and when he's not here, he's a senior lecturer in psychology at the University of Edinburgh. Alex, if you can, could you begin to share your slides?
I will try to. And there we go.
Yes.
Is that working?
It's working, and we have subtitles. Can we see it on the? Yes, and we can see it on the YouTube.
Amazing. Yeah.
All right. And with his presentation title, "Can being neurotic be a good thing?" All right. Timer will go as soon as you start talking. Take it away.
Okay. Thank you. So let's see what way to start this. Well, I mean, everyone's interested in living longer, living a better life longer. So not just living longer, but living pretty well and being relatively healthy. I recently collaborated with some guy who turned 100 shortly after the publication, the paper was published, and he was pretty sharp, sharper than I was. Pretty amazing guy. But this kind of interest has been going on for a long time. This is, I think, from the 1940s. But if you look on the internet, you'll no doubt find all sorts of tips on how to live longer life. But one thing a lot of these don't really get at are these kind of individual differences. So this is a nice way to illustrate this. So if I can just direct people's attention. So you've got this fellow here. See, that fellow here. That's Jess Oppenheimer. This guy here is Ginger Baker. You may or may not have heard of some of these. Jimi Hendrix, most people. That's Edward Dmytryk. And the center guy is Harry Patch. So what's remarkable about them, if you trying to figure out what kinds of factors cause people to live longer, live shorter lives, well, Jimi Hendrix and Jimmy Baker are both rock stars at about the same era, that is the 1960s. But as you can see, there's just a whopping difference in how long they lived. And that's despite the fact that, in addition to the very sort of everyday drugs they were doing in the 1960s, I think Ginger Baker had many, many encounters with the harder stuff, heroin and whatnot. And he just died a few years ago, and he was also a pretty unpleasant individual. And then you've got two other stars, and both the upper left and lower right corner. On the upper left, Oppenheimer versus Dmytryk, both in Hollywood. Jess Oppenheimer known for I Love Lucy, and Edward Dmytryk for movies like the Kane Mutiny and all kinds of film noir. And still kind of a pretty good difference in life expectancy, despite the fact that Edward Dmytryk was born a lot earlier. But both of them were certifiable geniuses. They were so-called termites. And if you want to ask me later what a termite is, I'll tell you. And Harry Patch in the middle lived for 111 years.
Alex.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. You're coming in a little bit soft. Could you speak up a little bit more, please?
Okay. So I'm sorry. So you got Harry Patch in the middle, who's well over 100 years old when he died. He was the last remaining British World War I veteran. So despite not having all the privileges of fame and this kind of thing, and facing being in the trenches and facing machine gun fire and that sort of thing, he still lived to a pretty healthy old age by anyone's definition. So what's possibly causing these differences? There's good evidence that personality is related to health, and typically there are five. Typically, people think of personality in terms of five big dimensions. And you can think of it as ocean, that is openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And I've sort of created the fonts and about the size of the effects of these things. So openness, extroversion, kind of smallish effects. Socioeconomic status, as a comparison, very small effects. IQ and neuroticism about the same size, and conscientiousness and agreeableness, really big effects. But neuroticism is a bit odd because the effects aren't quite always what people think. And neuroticism is not just sort of this general anxiety that people are feeling over the whole COVID situation, but just sort of a general state that they're in. It's more of a trait than a state. So here's some kind of ways to figure out if you might be high in neuroticism. You often feel bad or sad. You don't cope easily with stress. You're anxious. You make mountains out of molehills. And even a small single bad event can spoil your day. You encounter the same problems over and over and over again. And we know that because neuroticism is somewhat heritable, that your parents, your siblings, your identical twin, or other relatives are high in neuroticism, that probably suggests that you probably have a better than zero chance of being higher in neuroticism yourself. So neuroticism, some people think of this as like a either or thing, but it's more of a continuum. So you can be, anywhere from Hayase Misa on the left, who's very low in neuroticism, at least that seems to be my impression from Macross, to Lin Men Mei on the right, who wanted to throw herself and Hikaru Ichijo out of an airlock because she was just so upset. But maybe that's just true love for you. I don't know. And most people are somewhere in the, kind of have an average neuroticism. So the distribution is a nice bell curve. Neuroticism is pretty much invariably related to poor mental health. Lots of like the affective disorders like depression, a lot of the personality disorders like borderline personality disorder have pretty close links to neuroticism. So do phobias, obsessive compulsive disorder, and so on. So, kind of nicely demonstrated in the series Welcome to the NHK about a hikikomori. I probably pronounced that incorrectly, but that's life. And there's a general finding that neuroticism is related to poor health, poor physical health, I should say. But it's, oh geez, I really goofed that one. It's just related to physical health, but it's not always in the way we expect. So it's a general expectation, and a lot of papers find this, is that neuroticism is related to poor health. But there's some studies, including one of mine that was cited in this 2007 review, that are actually showing neuroticism is related to higher neuroticism is related to better health. And so this is just a quote from that paper saying, well, neuroticism generally seems to be bad for you, but there's some studies too in this case that reported a protective effect. And another thing that might indicate that you're high in neuroticism is that you go to the doctor because of bodily experiences and sensations. So you feel a little twinge one day. You maybe something just kind of changes in your sort of daily rhythm, or you're going to the bathroom at some odd hour that you normally don't go to the bathroom in, or you go to the bathroom more and you think something's wrong. You might be worried, whereas people low in neuroticism don't get worried about these things. And these people go to the doctors and mostly it's nothing, but maybe sometimes it is something. So kind of this going to the bathroom thing that kind of ties into a symptom of type 2 diabetes. And a former PhD student of mine, Eva Chukic, and I looked at this. And here we have just kind of a roundabout picture of what we found. So you have on the left, the blue thing is kind of like type 2 diabetes, and you see some overlap, which indicates a relationship. So type 2 diabetes is related to depression, right? So people who are depressed, so these pluses here, people who are depressed are at greater risk of type 2 diabetes and all kinds of other bad things. Like major depression is not a good thing. And of course, neuroticism and depression share overlap as well. But you'll notice here where this arrow is pointing, this little area here, this green area, is, you can think of this is like the part of neuroticism that's not related to depression. And maybe that's kind of a part of neuroticism that's a good thing. And we found that when you kind of take away that depression part of neuroticism, diabetes is actually more related to low neuroticism rather than high neuroticism. Okay, and these aren't huge effects. It's not like, you're high neuroticism, you'll get diabetes. You're just a greater risk. Some studies, including the one that was mentioned in the 2007 review, found that neuroticism is related to longer life. There's one Australian study by Corton et al. These are community-dwelling adults, all pretty old. A study of me by myself and others on 1,076 community-dwelling adults, and all the ones in this study, by the way, the Weiss et al. Study, these were all people who were pretty low in terms of socioeconomic status. Most of them had some serious medical conditions, and still neuroticism in these individuals was related to living longer. And then there's another study I did on Vietnam-era veterans who are between the ages of 31 and 48, also showing some effect that an association between higher neuroticism and lower mortality. So along comes this paper in 2009, kind of why are some of these studies finding neuroticism is good for you while other studies show it's bad for you? And this paper kind of called this modeling both the direct and indirect relationship. So neuroticism can have like an association via, say, psychological distress or alcohol use or smoking, or this somatic health variable here, which is made up of self-rated health, chronic illness, and forced vital capacity, which is like how much air can you expel through your lungs in 1 second? And someone tells you, well, slow. And what this study found was that all these pathways, these indirect pathways that I've highlighted in red, like this one here through psychological distress, or this one through somatic health, all of these pathways are related to increased risk. So neuroticism has, is related to increased risk of mortality because it's related to psychological distress, which probably includes things like depression. But this direct effect, just kind of neuroticism by itself, not via smoking, not somatic health, that's actually related to reduced risk. Okay. So we thought, we looked through these studies, and all of them had this kind of self-rated health variable in common. That was kind of the thing that set apart the studies that found neuroticism was protective, and the studies that found that neuroticism was not that neuroticism was bad for you. And this is these kinds of popular questions to ask because it's actually pretty strongly related to length of life. And that's just, in general, how would you rate your overall health? Single question gives you a good indication of how long, what your risk of dying is over the next couple of years. And this study was using used UK Biobank, which is something like over 300,000 participants, so lots and lots and lots of power to detect effects. And what we found is that when we accounted for the self-rated health variable, neuroticism was related to lower mortality. When we didn't, so we just looked at neuroticism but didn't include self-rated health, neuroticism was related to greater risk. So, that's pretty interesting, right? That's kind of suggesting that that variable is kind of the key as to why, something about the aspects of neuroticism captured by self-rated health is bad, and what's left over, if you will, is good stuff. So we wanted to look at what that part of neuroticism was. And I'm not going to go into factor analysis. And I was thinking, is there a way I could communicate, what factor analysis and bifactor rotation is, and within 2 minutes to a general audience or even a specialized audience? The answer is absolutely not. But factor analysis is just generally a way that we can sort of find out what items, say, in a scale, or what behaviors are going together more than the other ones. And we found evidence for 2 of these facets in this neuroticism scale used in Biobank. One was anxious/tense, that we labeled it. These people, they call themselves nervous people. they think of themselves as tense or highly strung, and they suffer from nerves. The scale was developed in the 1960s or something, so forgive the slightly anachronistic language. There's an even older scale that's has even better kind of anachronistic language in it. And then there's worried vulnerable. And that's, are your feelings hurt? Are you a worrier? Do you worry too long after an embarrassing experience, like, I don't know, screwing up the share screen thing when you're supposed to give a talk? And are you often troubled by guilt? And that's actually, we found that was protective against all kinds, sort of various different kinds of mortality, except for death from external causes. So when you're talking about cancer death, respiratory disease death, cardiovascular death, and all-cause mortality, it's protective. Absolutely no effect on like whether you're going to be, I don't know, murdered or die in an accident, so-called external causes. And sort of what you think about as neuroticism is this area of overlap where these two sorts of different facets or aspects of neuroticism share a variation in common. Okay. And we also looked at genetic correlations in a later study, so you can kind of like assess, and Biobank is good for this because lots and lots of participants make it possible to detect these teeny tiny genetic effects, really, really small. So you got lots of participants, and so we found evidence for some genes related to anxious tense, and some genes related to worried vulnerable, and some genes related to this general neuroticism factor. And then we can ask, are the genes for, say, each of these different bits of neuroticism and the general factor, do they overlap? Are they shared with, are they the same genes that are related to various health outcomes? Okay? And what you can see, so anything in green is saying that this is like related to like, this is a positive association, okay? So, longevity, in green means that worried vulnerable is related to living longer or parents' age of death. Anything red is a negative effect. And depending on how dark it is, that's kind of a stronger effect. And if you just look through this, you can see in most cases, the worried vulnerable and the anxious tension bits of neuroticism are kind of, here we have them in green, green, but general neuroticism has like an opposite effect. It's in red, in the opposite direction. And here you see the worry and vulnerability and anxious tense are related to kind of better cardiovascular health, the exception being blood pressure, which is also related to being anxious and tense, not surprisingly. But the direction of the effect.
Alex, it's a little bit hard to see your cursor. Could you circle it, please?
I'm sorry. So I'm sorry. So if you look here, this is cardiovascular disease, okay? And you see here, for worried vulnerable, it's all related. Worried vulnerable is related to lower levels of coronary artery disease, lower diastolic blood pressure, lower systolic blood pressure. But look at this. So anxious tense, it's also related to lower coronary artery disease. But people who are still in the thing that suggests that they're anxious and tense, those people, the genes for that anxious and tense thing are shared with actual blood pressure, higher blood pressure. And you can just see again, here are these kind of different effects. These bits of neuroticism related to better cognitive functioning or better SES, better longevity results, whereas that general factor, that overlapping bit, is related to poor elements. The only place where that really doesn't happen for the most part is mental health, okay? So even if you have the, kind of good bits of neuroticism for physical health, it's still like not very good for your mental health. And so you kind of just go through this, but you can see that there's these opposite effects. So some aspects of neuroticism are good for you, being worried and vulnerable, and that general factor is not necessarily good for you. Okay, so I'm just going to jump to conclusions, and I don't like very wordy slides, so you'll forgive me for just blabbing on. The conclusions are that, it's probably if you want to think of a mechanism that, this is just, this is just kind of, are pondering what this means, right? We haven't tested whether this is the case directly, but this is just, kind of one possible way that what might be going on is people who are worried and vulnerable may just go to the doctor a lot and catch things, okay? And like here in Japan, I noticed, because I go to the doctor and things, they test you for everything all the time, and people are tested very, very regularly, and that probably, well, it probably causes some like false positives, but it may catch things like cancer or heart disease in the early stages. And the other really interesting thing is kind of for an evolutionary explanation, like why is there variation in neuroticism? Why aren't we all just like at the optimal level of neuroticism? Say if the optimal level of neuroticism was a 3 on a 7-point scale, why aren't we all like that, right? Because you'd expect, like, people who have suboptimal neuroticism, whether too high or too low, would get left out of the gene pool. Well, if neuroticism has these multiple effects, some good and some bad, bad on mental health and good in some ways in physical health and bad in some ways in physical health, that might explain how that, people are still able, there's still variation in the population. And as with all things, I've got kind of acknowledgments here, and thanks a lot to Ray for setting this up. But just thanking my hosts at the WRC, including Miho Moriyama, thanking Tetsuro Matsuzawa and Tomoko Kurihara, the latter of whom has helped with getting set up living in Japan and exiting Japan, and some colleagues of mine like Paul Costa and Ian Deary, David Hill and Eva Chukic, who helped with these studies or were part of these studies, and funding from that Ian got for a lot of the UK Biobank studies. And I think that's my slide. So I think there's time for questions, or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
That was just 20 minutes. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Alex, for the great and informative talk. Now we have room for questions. So if you're on the YouTube, please write down in the chat, or if you're joining us on Zoom, go ahead, either write in the chat, or you can use the hand up signal, and we can unmute you and pick. So while we're waiting for the question to come up, I actually have one on this. So you're working at the WRC, the Wildlife Research Center, at Kyoto University. It doesn't seem like, Kyoto University doesn't have a psych department per se. But so what is your work now at WRC then? Working with animals themselves?
Yeah, well, not my main, but I've got two sets of research interests. In general, personality psychology. Oh dear.
Sorry, could you turn your video back on?
How did I turn it off in the first place?
Sorry, I accidentally turned it off. I wanted to change the slide sharing.
Start my video. Hold on.
Okay, you're back.
I'll just kill my share. There we
go.
Thank
you.
So I study personality, but I study it in humans and I study it in animals. I started studying personality in animals before I started studying it in humans. The fun thing being, I've never taken a course in personality in my life for whatever reason. Because before I started in personality, I wanted nothing to do with the study of personality. It's a long, boring story, but it's just kind of my. I was mainly interested in animal learning, and I just wound up falling into the personality thing, and it's pretty good stuff. And I find all kinds of looking for, you could say, connections or ways that say chimpanzees are similar to humans in their personality, or vice versa. And that's been my bread and butter now for longer than I'd like to remember. Like since 2000, I guess my first talk on that was like 1998 on the chimpanzees. So yeah, long time, 22 years. You're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. That's a long time studying personality. So, well, then we were talking about neuroticism. Then, like, do you see the signs of neuroticism in the animal kingdom? Are there certain animal species that are more like appear to be more like that, or does it
It's not.
depend?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's hard. It's always hard to compare species and like how high or low a species is on something, right? Like make a direct comparison. It's but within species, you see within a lot of species, you can see something like orangutans. There's just as much variation in neuroticism as there is in humans. Chimpanzees, you see something like that. Not as clearly defined, but yeah, there's still something. What other species can I think? So yeah, various, lots and lots of animals have something kind of similar to that, where you can measure them on that. And it's just a normally distributed trait, right? So if you measure it, if you get like a sample of animals, sample of people, and you get them all to fill out a questionnaire, or you get people to rate the animals or make some behavioral observations, you get a nice bell curve, every time. With just about any kind of biological or psychological trait, if you like get a big sample of people, you get a bell curve. That's just the wonders of quantitative genetics in action. Just basically the roll of the dice. So
Then is that more in line with like social animals, that like animals that live in groups, or does that change then if they have if in more solitary animals?
Not that I found. I guess there may be difference in how they express it, but orangutans are very, very solitary animals, and they seem, their neuroticism factor is as clear as day. When I saw it, it's like, yep, that's neuroticism. No question about it.
Oh, I'd love to see a neurotic orangutan, or just ones that show that kind of trait.
Yeah. Well, the orangutans are, I guess they're a bit, because they're not like really. Seeing a neurotic chimpanzee is a lot easier, because orangutans are pretty quiet, and they don't really move. With chimpanzees, there's just a lot more sort of melodrama in their life. A really good book, and it's not really about personality, but it's just a great book about chimpanzees in general. Is called Chimpanzee Politics by Franz de Waal. Anything by Jane Goodall on her early stuff about zombie is great too. But Chimpanzee Politics is just, you read it and you think you're like, that you're like, just thinking about a bunch of humans interacting with each other. So, yeah.
Oh, there it is. Chimpanzee Politics by Franz de Waal.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'll put that in the chat in
Okay.
case anybody wants to take a look at it.
Yeah.
Questions from the audience, or from Katie? Honestly, I could just keep asking questions from this.
Yeah, there's nothing on the YouTube right now, but I was wondering about the studies that you mentioned. So like, how did you collect this data from people?
Oh, well, like a biobank and all these, it's just somebody goes out. These are most of these studies are essentially existing databases. So UK Biobank, people just pay X amount of money to access UK Biobank. There's some like the Vietnam veterans that's like just freely available.
Oh, okay.
And there's other like if you ever want to like kind of do like amateur, like learn statistics and do like amateur data analysis, there's so much data out there that you can analyze. You just go to like I think it's ICPSR, and you can like just kind of like search for any kind of like trait or like health type thing, and they'll throw up like a zillion, not a zillion, but just a bunch of like data sets that you could just download for free and just start analyzing.
Wow, so it's just already there. You don't have to do any of the data collection work.
No. And the thing is, it's really good to use these data sets, right? Because like grant money paid for them, and they've collected more data than you could probably ever collect on your own.
Oh, interesting. Thank you.
You said there was a question from the chat, or?
Not right now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything right now. How about our participants in Zoom?
I have a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, John, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask. So I saw you definitely had some NHK there. Welcome to the NHK there at the start of your presentation. I was wondering. I guess just anthropologically, like I just see a lot more of entertainment and a lot more kind of analysis of these things from like Japanese entertainment and anime especially. I was wondering if there was any like if there's anything in your, I mean, I just think it's so interesting that this like really write about, like really actually make shows about that. Like you see it in the US with I don't want to say like butterfly effect, but like there's definitely like a few that I'm not thinking the name of right now. They're really good analysis of this, but I don't see it as commonly checked or commonly portrayed as I do in Japan, specifically like in subculture of anime and things. So I was wondering if there was any reason for that, if you saw like different analysis through different countries, different cultures, that kind of thing.
Oh gosh, I really don't know. It's a long question. You can always drop me an email and chat about it that way, but chat about Linux as well. I really don't know. I guess it's not my field. I mean, there may be taboos with different countries and discussing certain things, but I couldn't say. I really couldn't say. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. I just wanted to know if there was like any like, oh, is you know, that one province in Western, like, you know, somewhere like actually there's like a lot of neuroticism over there.
Well, okay, well, some people have done that with like the UK and the United States.
That makes sense to me.
So, but yeah, I don't think anyone's done it with Japan, but that'd be kind of a neat study as well.
Yeah, I would like to see the first world countries kind of compared on that, especially this year.
Yeah.
I have one more question if we have time. Is it okay, Raymond? Or
if we
time's up?
Honestly, yeah, we got enough for one or two more questions, and since the floor is open, nobody's commenting. So, like, honestly, like, have at it.
So I've been reading a book called Sex at Dawn recently, which is about bonobo relationships basically, and it's kind of comparing how I don't know anything about this at all. I'm just interested person that's reading books, like comparing how chimpanzees and bonobos relate to human evolution. And the authors of this book basically say that like you can draw some big comparisons, and in some ways maybe looking at bonobos is more accurate, or like there's some parts that we're missing if we just look at chimpanzees for like a human connections with human nature. Have you heard about this?
I think that what I know of bonobos and things is that bonobos and chimpanzees is kind of like, you can think of them both about equally distant from humans. They're both kind of like similar to humans in slightly different ways and different from humans. Yeah. Sorry. Oh dear, I think I have a child crying in the background. It might be a good time for me to leave because my kid is crying. So.
Oh no.
Okay. Well, thank you, Alex.
Okay, yeah, that's of it. So, thanks. Yes, take care of that.
Okay. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well, if you're interested in bonobos, maybe I'll reach out to some of the. I think there are a couple of researchers over at the Primate Research Institute.
Yeah, I want to know about bonobos. I'm very interested these days.
And you know, a lot of people focus on chimpanzees, but you know, bonobos are there too, and they're what is it? It's not a patriarchy. It's the what's the opposite of that?
Matriarchy.
Matriarchy.
Yeah, and it's also kind of like even. They don't have fights so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's just all about the love.
Yeah, just copious amounts of sex.
So yeah, it's very interesting, I thought.
All right. Well, let's see. I wanted to close out with thanks to Alex, but yeah, he has to take care of his kids, so that's good. Any kind of more questions? People are welcome to throw in, and I'll toss it to him on email. I think he's going to be at Kyodai for another like week or so until he has to go back to the UK. But John, you said before we leave, you said you had the server is up and running.
Oh yeah. So the server that we just created live from scratch is good to go. I'll share my screen briefly and then drop the link. So if you can see, we have the console. And you guys can see the console right now?
Yep.
Yeah, so basically the last step, the only step that we couldn't show was configuring the initial user and connecting it to our internal network. That's pretty well defined in the guide. And as we can see, we did a little status test, and we can see that the server is currently active and running. And I have it running right here. If we just go right here, and then I will show you the actual screen, and it is right there, and it's running, and I'm just kind of chilling. And right, I will drop the here's the link in YouTube, and you guys can maybe after the talk we can have a beer and we can all talk together before I blow this server up and destroy the droplet tomorrow or morning.
Could you jump? Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah, there, yep. I got it. I'm gonna see if I can get on this right now. Yep.
And this is I saw a comment from Christina that said, "Hi John, I don't know much about computer programming, but your presentation was interesting. Thank you." And I just want you all to know that you don't need to know any programming. I'm pretty still learning programming more deeply. But yeah, if you just drop this up and pull this up, and you can get this working pretty fast.
Oh, I need the mobile app on this thing.
Oh yeah. So Jitsi, the open source developers, they have a mobile client app as well that can be used.
That's not I don't know. Just the opening. Oh, you can't see it, but the opening screen is like a really just like this weird guy with
it's probably Unsplash default graphics. I think they pulled out for free.
What's on the open source free image use of like generic white guy?
A good open source image site is Unsplash. Unsplash, they don't require any like attributions, though you should give them to the best of my knowledge.
Excellent. That's good. I might actually use that for work.
Yeah, and I can see. Yeah, I can see I'm connected. I think you just joined, Raymond. Is that right?
Did I? Hold on. Let me. God, what am I doing?
Yeah, I think I'm in now, so I can hear.
Oh, you're in, Katie. Yeah. So I can show on the screen, if I hover over your name, the end-to-end has a little bit high, but I'm highlighting over the end-to-end RTTD, which is the delay between our encrypted communication, and that's loaded encrypted right there. So it works. All you have to do is just follow the guide, and anyone who followed along today can definitely do this tomorrow if you want, with you and your friends, and it's really handy. Especially when you're like, even in a professional context, when you're like, oh, should we meet on Skype? Should we meet on Zoom? Should we meet on this? Should we meet on that? And it's like, oh, here you go. Here's a link. Let's just join up the day.
Oh, wait, hold on. How do I do this?
I haven't used the mobile app specifically, but it's good that they have it.
They're sending me to the okay. Oh, cool. Well, definitely you'll check that out, and I will make it available. And the links that you showed are good if people want to just kind of figure out. Just it's the second day of a 3-day weekend, so if people want to give it a shot.
Yeah, I'll leave it up like today. Well, yeah, I mean, I have an authentication on it, so I can't just you can't actually create a room, but yeah, it's all available there on the DigitalOcean tutorials. Cool. I'll leave it up as an example tonight.
All right. We don't have any more additional comments or questions coming in, it looks like. So, yeah, I think with that, we can bring our talk to a close here. First of all, thank you very much, everybody, joining us. Thankfully, it is everybody's, I hope, is indoors and staying cool, because my God, August rolls around and it just becomes sweltering. We will try to keep continuing doing Nerd Night. We hope to do another event in September and then October, and yeah, and so please check our website, the Facebook, the Twitter, for any of the new information that you might, if you want to join. We'll probably be doing it online again. In the meantime, please stay safe, stay cool. Katie, please, any kind of comments or suggestions to our message to the group?
Yeah, just thank you everyone for listening in. And if anybody wants to be a speaker or knows anyone who might want to be a speaker, please get in touch, because we're always looking for people.
I have gotten a comment in the past to say like I'm interested in speaking, but I don't think the topic is nerdy enough.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, if it's a topic you want to talk about and you're passionate about, and like you've maybe brought it, and maybe if you brought it up at a dinner party or something, and people start glazing over their eyes, like, yeah, that's a nerdy topic as it is.
Yeah. So, I really think like a nerd is anybody that's really passionate about something, right?
Yeah. I mean, we just had an entire talk where it doesn't even have to be a PowerPoint. If we just had a console command thing just go through for 20 minutes. It was great. Yeah. And so yes, please reach out to us for any kind of, if you are interested. And it's a good start to actually see one of these and participate in it. And and it's all good, and it's all good fun.
Okay. All right. Should we finish up then?
Yep. Okay, we're good. Well, thank you very much,
everyone.
Thanks, Katie, for taking care of the YouTube.
Yeah, thank you for doing everything else.
And thank you very much for our participants, John, for our speakers, John and Alex, and everybody who joined us on both Zoom and on the YouTube.
Okay, we'll see you next time then.
Stay cool, stay frosty.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.